Tabernacle Man, teaching biblical principles to a sight and sound generation.
3,500 years ago, the Tabernacle of Moses was the first portable sanctuary for worshipping the Lord. When Moses ascended Mount Sinai, the Lord was very specific with regards to the pattern that needed to be followed in order to construct the tabernacle, and he was very clear that Moses should not deviate from this pattern whatsoever. So why is it that we as believers need to study this pattern today? Is it possible that it could have any relevance for the Lord's people in this day and age? And could it seriously give us any insights into our own spiritual walk by studying this ancient form of worship? Our hope for today is to answer these questions and more as we introduce you to the purpose, the plan, and the pattern of the tabernacle.
And thou shalt make the court of the tabernacle. For the south side southward there shall be hangings for the court of fine twined linen, 100 cubits long for one side. And the pillars thereof shall be 20, and their sockets 20, of copper. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. And likewise for the north side in length there shall be hangings 100 cubits long, and the pillars thereof 20, and their sockets 20, of copper. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the breadth of the court on the west side shall be hangings of 50 cubits. Their pillars 10, and their sockets 10. And the breadth of the court on the east side eastward shall be 50 cubits. The hangings for the one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits. The pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the other side shall be hangings of 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the gate of the court shall be a screen of 20 cubits, of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen, the work of the weaver in colors, the pillars 4, and the sockets 4. All the pillars of the court round about shall be filleted with silver, their hooks of silver, and their sockets of copper. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, and the breadth 50 everywhere, and the height 5 cubits, of fine twined linen, and their sockets of copper. All the instruments of the tabernacle, in all the service thereof, and all the pins thereof, and all the pins of the court shall be of copper. Exodus chapter 27, verses 9 through 19.
What I want to do is take a few moments and just explain the pattern that Moses was given for the altar of burnt sacrifice.
And he made the altar of burnt offering of acacia wood. 5 cubits was the length thereof, and 5 cubits the breadth thereof, 4 square, and 3 cubits the height thereof. And he made the horns thereof upon the 4 corners of it. The horns thereof were of one piece with it, and he overlaid it with copper. And he made all the vessels of the altar, the pots, and the shovels, and the basins, the flesh hooks, and the fire pans. All the vessels thereof made he of copper. And he made for the altar a grating of network of copper, under the ledge round it beneath, reaching halfway up. And he cast 4 rings for the 4 ends of the grating of copper, to be holders for the staves. And he made the staves of acacia wood, and overlaid them with copper. And he put the staves into the rings on the sides of the altar, wherewith to bear it, he made it hollow with planks. Exodus chapter 38, verses 1 through 7.
So what we have here is a altar, a grill, if you would say, that is made of acacia wood planks that are covered with hammered copper to protect the wood from burning. Copper conducts heat and spreads it out, so it's not going to burn through in any one particular place. You'll notice that in many versions of the Bible, it describes the size of the altar of burnt sacrifice in terms of cubits. And remember, a cubit is basically the measurement from a man's elbow to the tip of his finger. And commonly it's said that a cubit in the Bible represents 18 inches. So this particular instrument is 4.5 feet tall. It's in measurements of cubits, and 5 cubits square, 5 cubits in each direction, and those cubits translate into 7.5 feet. So what you have is a wood box covered with copper that is for. There is a rock ramp, rock and dirt ramp. These materials would not have been hewn with hammers or axes or anything. They would have been taken from the ground. Is just you can see that amount of dirt. It's lifted up and to this because you way will keep it. You have to some way have some way pull out the ashes. We know that if you do not remove the our fire was lit by God. After 7 days of inauguration and ceremony of instituting or inaugurating the tabernacle, day first, and when the pattern was right, the fire and lit the original firewood of the altar of burnt sacrifice. And you can see our flames are rolling in our footage, and to kind of give you an idea of what that might look like. It says that there were 4 horns, 4 protrusion the altar itself. Now, horns in the Bible are a symbol of strength, a symbol of power. I asked one rabbi one time, "Why does the altar have 4 horns on it?" And well, it's got 4 horns. And then he smiled and he said, "How many horns do animals have?" And I go, "Well, usually 2. Strength. God's altar has 4 horns. I don't know if that's true. Oh, let's comes up on the altar side, and this is the altar when it was prescribed to do that. So the blood when running down all over the altar, it would have been in this cup that would have been inside this little square protrusion. That's where the blood would be poured. And after a while, it would dry up because of emanating from sort of burnt sacrifice. Uh, the scripture tells us that the pots, the fire pans, the flesh, the shovels, even
sacrifice. Now there are some
container at the
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to this week's Torah study. This is Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And we are in Parshat Tetzaveh. And that's going to be Exodus 27:20 through 30. There's some internet issues here. We're dealing with the building of the Mishkan, and in just a second. Okay. All right. So we're going to do what we usually do. We're going to spend the morning study mostly reading the. Let me just change this a little bit. Boom. Go. That's what I meant to do. Hello. There we go. And the morning Torah study, mostly reading through the Torah with little commentary. And then we'll spend the afternoon Torah analyzing a bit more. So that's what we're going to do this week on internet. Biblical Hebrew was pronounced, but there are various ideas. There are various Hebrew is a and the do it else. So as I said, we don't know for sure what it exactly sounded like, but many people think that the kamat sounded like an aw sound. And the kamat is an ah, but we'll see. I'll adjust it over time. At any rate, bear with me. It's a work in understanding in Torah learning is, and anyone who thinks otherwise is, who pretends they know everything in Torah is, of course, lying to themselves and to anyone listening to them. So here we go. We are going to start. We're in Exodus chapter 27, and we're in verse 20. We're dealing with the oil for the lamps. Okay, so Exodus 27:20. We ata Tetzaveh et bnei Yisrael yilchu elechem zayet zoch tit or tomi be'oher le porov ad liota. Okay, so we'll go with Yehovah Kat Olam le dorotom me'et bnei Israel. We're now in Exodus 28. Oops, I forgot to share the screen correctly. 1 second. Let's do this the right way. Share screen, window, later, and there we go. Okay. All right. Well, since I didn't share the screen correctly, and it's only a couple of verses, let me do it again from 27:20. So we're in Exodus 27:20, beginning again at the beginning of the parsha. It's not too long a parsha, really. Okay. Tetzaveh et bnei Yisrael ויקחו אליך שמן זית זך חתית למאור להעלות נר תמיד באוהל מועד מחוץ לפרוכת אשר על העדות יערוך אותו אהרון ובניו מערב עד בוקר לפני יהוה חוקת עולם לדורותם מאת בני ישראל. Okay, 1 second. And now Exodus 28. Now into the garments for the priests. Ve'ata akrev elecha et Aharon achicha ואת בנו איתו מתוך בני ישראל לכהנו לי אהרון נדב ואביהו אלעזר ואיתמר בני אהרון. Of course, Nadav and Avihu are unfortunately going to meet their demise, as we know. ועשית בכדי קודש לאהרון אחיך לכבוד ולתפארת. ואתה תדבר אל כל חכמי לב אשר מלטיב רוח חכמה ועשו את בכדי אהרון לקדשו לכהנו לי. ואלה הבגדים אשר יעשו חושך. And that's another thing, by the way, for those of you familiar with Hebrew. So in biblical Hebrew, there's this belief of that there was the beged kefet, sometimes they call the bagad kafat letters that have two different sounds, right? If it has a dot in it, an ikud in it, then it's a vocalized sound. No, I shouldn't say that. If there's a dot in it, then it's no, it's I guess I forgot the technical word for it, but it has two different sounds: an open dot and a closed dot, right? So we have to be careful here. The gimel here is an open dot, so I think the Yemenites pronounce that as they might pronounce the closed dot as a j and the open dot as a r. I don't remember, but I pronounce the open. If it doesn't have a dot, I pronounce it as a r, kind of a guttural r sound, and if it has a dot in it, then it's a g. That's the way I'm doing it. So, وَإِلَى habiradim asher ya'asu choshen wa'ifod u'me'il u'ketonet tashbetz mitznefet ועבנת ועשו בכדי קודש לאהרון אחיך ולבנו לכהנו לי, והם ייקחו את הזהב ואת התכלת ואת הארגמון ואת תולעת השני ואת השש. We spoke about these substances last week. We said that tchelet may or may not come from the hexaplex trunculus, from the snail, the sea snail that lives around the Mediterranean. The argamon also may or may not, but would very possibly come from that animal, which the Phoenicians were famous for making purple from. Tola'at shani comes from not a worm, but a worm-like creature. I forgot the technical name of it. I can't remember offhand. And the shesh, the shesh we said may come from the hairs of bivalves such as mussels, abyssal threads of bivalves such as mussels. We went through this in detail last week. These are all, of course, speculation. We don't know exactly where they came from. Okay, so to move on, we are in verse 6. We're in Exodus 28, verse 6. وَعَصُوا et ha'ifod zahov tchelet وأرجمون تولعات شاني وشيش مشزار معسeh hashev shte. And we're in verse 7 now. shte חטפות חוברות יהיה לו all שני קיצותיו וחובור וחשב עפודתו אשר עליו כמעשהו ממנו יהיה זהב תכלת וארגמון ותולעת שני ושש מושזר ולקחת את שתי אבני שוהם ופיתחת עליהם שמות בני ישראל שישה משמותם על האבן האחד ואת שמות השישה הנותרים על האבן השנית כתולדותם מעשה חרש אבן פיתוחי אותם תפתח את שתי האבנים על שמות בני ישראל מוסבות משבצות זהב תעשה אותם ושמת את שתי האבנים על כתפות האפוד אבני זיכרון לבני ישראל ונשא אהרון את שמותם לפני יהוה על שתי כתפיו לזיכרון. ועשית משבצות זהב ושתי שרשרות זהב טהור מגבלות תעשה אותם מעשה אבות ונתת את שרשרות האבותות על המשבצות. Okay, we're in verse 15 right now, so we're in Exodus chapter 28, verse 15. ועשית חושן משפט מעשה חושב כמעשה אפוד תעשינו זהב תכלת וארגמון ותורעת שוני ושש משזור תעשה אותו רבוע יהיה כפול זרת ארכו וזרת רוחבו ומילאתו בו מילואת אבן 4 טורים אבן טור אודם פיתדו וברקת הטור האחד והטור השני נופך ספיר ויוחלום והטור השלישי לשם שיבו ואח לומה והטור הרביעי תרשיש ושוהם ויושפה משובצים זהב יהיו במילואתם. Verse 21. It's really hard to try to pronounce it. When you're used to pronouncing Hebrew in regular, Ashkenazi, modern Israeli, Hebrew, it really takes time to kind of get used to getting all the nuances of biblical Hebrew. But the Masoretes were very exact, whether it was the vowelization or whether it was placing a nikud, like here inside the vav, inside the vet. I mean, there is no nikud. They were very exacting in their in their pointillation of the letters. So it's interesting and fun to try to perfect it week by week. Okay, we all vonim tieno all al shemot bnei Israel shtem esrei al shemotom pitohe hotom ish al shemo tieno shne asar shavet. ועשית על החושן שרשרות גבלות מעשה אבות זהב טהור ועשית על החושן שתי טבעות זהב ונתת את שתי הטבעות על שני קצות החושן ונתת את שתי האבותות זהב על שתי הטבעות אל קצות החושן. Verse 25. ואת שתי קצות שתי האבותות תיתן על שתי המשבצות ונתת על כתפות האפוד אל מול פניו. Verse 26. ועשית שתי טבעות זהב ושמת אותם על שני קצות החושן על שפותיו אשר על עבר האפוד ביתה. ועשית שתי טבעות זהב ונתת אותם על שתי כתפות האפוד מלמטה ממול פניו לעומת מחברתו ממעל לחשב האפוד. Verse 28, וירכסו את החושן מטבעותיו אל טבעות האפוד בפתיל תכלת. Notice here, פתיל תכלת here also is a string of blue, the same kind of string that we have on the tzitzit. להיות על חשב האפוד ולא ייזח החושן מעל האפוד. Verse 29, ונשא אהרון את שמות בני ישראל בחושן המשפט על בבואו אל הקודש לזיכרון לפני יהוה תמיד. ונתת אל חושן המשפט אל האורים ואת התומים והיו על לב אהרון בבואו לפני יהוה ונשא אהרון את משפט בני ישראל על ליבו לפני יהוה תמיד. Verse 31 ועשית את מעיל האפוד כליל תכלת והיה פי ראשו בתוכו שפה יהיה לפיו סביב מעשה אורג חפי טהרה יהיה לו לא יקורע. 33 ועשית על שולו הרימוני תכלת וארגמון ותולעת שני על שולו סביב ופעמוני זהב בתוכם סביב. פעמון זהב והרימון פעמון זהב והרימון על שולי המאיר סביב. היה על אהרון לשרת ונשמע קולו בבואו אל הקודש לפני יהוה בצאתו ולא ימות. Verse 36 ועשית סיס זהב טהור ותחתו עליו פיתוחי חותם קודש ליהוה ושמת אותו על פתיל תכלת. תכלת. Sometimes you overdo it. The chaf is it's not guttural. It's kind of from the middle of the mouth. תכלת והיה על המצנפת אל מול פני המצנפת יהיה. והיה על מצח אהרון ונשא אהרון את ארון הקודשים קדשיהם היה על מצחו תמיד לרצון להם לפני יהוה. Verse 39 ושיבצת הכתונת 6 ועשית מצנפת 6 ואבנית תעשה מעשה רוקם. Verse 40 ולבני אהרון תעשה כתונת ועשית להם אבנתים ומגבעות תעשה להם לכבוד ולתפארת. והלבשתם את אהרון אחיך ואת בניו איתו ומשכת אותם ומילאת את ידם וקידשת אותם וכיהנו לי ועשה להם מכנסי בד לכסות בשר אירוע ממותניים ועד ירחיים יהיו. 43 וחיו על אהרון ועל בניו בבואם אל אוהל מועד או בגישתם אל המזבח לשרת בקודש ולא יישאו אורון ומתו וקט עולם לא ולזרעו אחריו. Okay, that's the end of Exodus chapter 28. Now we go to Exodus chapter 29, consecration of the priests. וזה הדבר אשר תעשה להם לקדש אותם לכהן לי לקח פר אחד בן בקר ואלים 2 תמימים ולחם מסות וחלות מסות בילולות בשמן ורקיקי מסות משוחים בשמן סולת חיטים תעשה אותם ונתת אותם על סל אחד והקרבת אותם בסל ואת הפר ואת 2 האלים ואת אהרון ואת בניו תקריב אל פתח אוהל מועד ורחצת אותם במים ולקחת את הבגדים והלבשת את אהרון את הכתונת ואת מעיל האפוד ואת האפוד ואת החושן ועפדת לו לחשב האפוד. Verse 6. ושמת המצנפת על ראשו ונתת את נזר הקודש על המצנפת ולקחת את שמן המשחה ויצקת על ראשו ומשכת אותו ואת בניו תקריב והלבשתם כתונת ותנות וחרדת That's very interesting because in modern Hebrew you'd pronounce it as vichagarta, like that, vichagarta. If you want to do an Israeli accent, vichagarta with the guttural resh, which is sickening. It's just so completely antithetical to the way Hebrew should be pronounced. It comes from, I guess, German and European languages. But here everything is. This is, you notice the het. Well, the chet is always guttural. The gimel here is without a nikud, so it's a r that's also guttural, and the resh rolls off the tongue like a Spanish resh, r. So it's hararta. So actually, the word moves from kind of the back of the mouth, guttural, towards the front of the mouth, and it just rolls off. If you say it with the modern pronunciation, vichagarta, it's just very makes your mouth jumble up. But if you say it with the suspected or the what many people believe is the more original Hebrew pronunciation, then it's a very, you see why the Masoretes, well, they were just writing down the way people already pronounced it, but why the Masoretes left the gimel without a nikud and the resh. Well, the resh is not one of the big kefet letters, but at any rate, it just rolls off the tongue much more beautifully. We hagarta otam avnet Aharon u bono we חובשת להם מבעוד והייתה להם כהונה וחוקת עולם ומילאת יד אהרון ויד בניו. Okay, we're now in Exodus 29, verse 10. Exodus 29:10. ויקראת את הפור לפני אוהל מועד וסמך אהרון ובנו את ידיהם על ראש הפור ושחטת את הפור לפני יהוה. Again, I'm actually thinking very seriously lately that the name is not pronounced Yehovah, and I'll have more information on that. Petach ohel moed ולקחת מדם הפור בעץ בו שפוך אל יסוד המזבח ולקחת את כל החלב המכסה את הקרב ואת היותרת על כבד ואת שתי הכליות ואת החלב אשר עליהן והקטעת המזבחה ואת בשר הפור ואת עורו ואת פרשו תשרוף באש מחוץ למחנה חטאת הוא. Verse 15. ואת העיל האחד תיקח וסמכו אהרון ובנו את ידיהם על ראש האוהל ושחטת את העיל ולקחת את דמו וזרקת על המזבח סביב ואת העיל תנתח וחצת קרבו וכרעהו ונתת על ניחתו ועל ראשו. Verse והכתרת את כל העיל המזבח עולה הוא ליהוה, ריח ניחוח אישה ליהוה הוא. ולקחת את העיל השני ושמח אהרון ובניו את ידיהם על ראש העיל. ושחטת את העיל ולקחת מדמו ונתת על תנוך אוזן אהרון ועל תנוך אוזן בניו הימונית ועל בוהן ידם הימונית ועל בוהן רגלם הימנית, וזרקת את הדם על המזבח סביב, ולקחת מן הדם אשר על המזבח ומשמן המשחה והזית על אהרון ועל בגדיו ועל בניו ועל מכדי בניו איתו, וקדש הוא ובגדיו ובניו ובכדי בניו איתו. ולקחת מן העיל החלב והעלייה, that's the tail fat, ואת החלב המכסה את הקרב, ואת יותרת הכבד, ואת הכבד, ואת שתי הכליות, ואת החלב אשר עליהן, ואת שוק היומין, כי אל מילואים הוא, וכיכר לחם אחד, וחלת לחם שמן אחת, ורקיק אחד. One second. מסל המסות אשר לפני יהוה. Verse 24. ושמת הכל על כפי אהרון ועל כפי בניו, והנפת אותם תנופות לפני יהוה. Verse 25. ולקחת אותם מידם והכתרת המזבח על העולה לריח ניחוח לפני יהוה, אישה הוא ליהוה. ולקחת את הזה מאל המילואים אשר לאהרון, והנפת אותו תנופה לפני יהוה, והיה לך למונה, וקידשת את הזה התנופה, ואת שוק התרומה אשר הונף ואשר הורה מאל המילואים, מאשר לאהרון ומאשר לבניו, והיה לאהרון ולבניו לחוק עולם מאת בני ישראל, כי תרומה יהיה מאת בני ישראל מזבחי שלמיהם תרומתם ליהוה. ובגדי הקודש אשר לאהרון יהיו לבניו, אחריו למשכו בהם ולמלא בם את ידם 7 ימים ילבשם הכהן תחתיו מבניו, אשר יבוא אל אוהל מועד לשרת בקודש. And we're now in verse 31, so in Exodus chapter 29, verse 31. ואת אל המילואים תיקח ובישלת את בשרו במקום קודש, קדוש, ואוכל אהרון ובנה את בשר העיל ואת העיל, it's not קרוא העיל, ואת הלחם אשר בסול פתח אוהל מועד, ואוכלו אותם אשר כופר בהם למלא את ידם, לקדש אותם וזר וזור לא יאכל כי קודש הם. Verse 34. ואם יהיו יותר מבשר המילואים מן הלחם עד הבוקר, ושרפת את הנותר באש לא יהיה אוכל, כי קודש הוא. ועשית לאהרון ולבנו ככה ככל אשר ציוויתי אותך 7 ימים תמלא ידם. ועשיתי לאהרון ולבניו ככה אשר ציוויתי אותך. This doesn't say otcha, this is otocha. This is in kamatz, under the tuf. I have an explanation for that. Shivat yamim timale yodom. Verse 36. Upar hatot aseh liyom al. Just fill it up when you're done and put it back here, okay? Al akipurim wa hiteta al hamzbeach be chat bercha alaw u mashachta oto לקדשו 7 ימים תכפר. Fill it up please again and put it back here as I asked. Thank you. 7 ימים תכפר על המזבח וקידשת אותו והיה המזבח קודש קודשים כל over here please כל הנוגע במזבח יקדוש. verse 38. וזה אשר תעשה על המזבח כבשים בני שנה 2 ליום תמיד, ואת הכבש האחד תעשה בבוקר, ואת הכבש השני תעשה בין 40. It's also the same time that we're supposed to bring the Passover offering. Okay, so we have the boker and between ben 40. Sometimes this is referred to as erev. Ben 40. Well, if you think of what erev comes from, erev is usually translated as evening. Ben 40, I guess literally they would try to translate it as between the evenings. I'm curious to see how they translate it here. So that's Exodus, that's 29:40. Let's see what the NIV says for that one, just to get a kind of standard translation. 29:40. The first lamb, blah, 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 and a quarter of a hin with the woods at twilight. So they translate Ben 40 as at twilight. So yeah, that's exactly that is exactly the correct translation, as a matter of fact. So twilight, if we look up. So the soft glowing light from the sky when the sun is below the horizon caused by the refraction and scattering of the sun's rays from the atmosphere. So basically twilight is the time between when the sun sets and complete darkness, okay? So if you think of, if you think of the way that the Torah separates the 24-hour day, or what we call 24 hours. There was no concept back then of 24 hours. All that comes from the Babylonians and comes later on. I don't remember exactly when they developed the system, but they had a system. They had a system based on 60, basically. And in fact, when I was in college, my undergraduate degree was in computer science. But I also took a lot of mathematics classes. I had one of my professors was an expert, one of the world's leading experts on Babylonian mathematics, and he used to speak a lot about this and how anything that has in our modern day that has multiples or sometimes factors of 60 is derived from the Babylonian system. So 360 degrees, 12 hours on the clock, 60 minutes per hour, 60 seconds per minute. All of this derives from the Babylonian system of mathematics. At any rate, in the Israelite system, there was no sense of an hour or a minute or anything along these lines. They would split the day in other ways, And so you had, for instance, I have to remember all of them. It really requires a full study. But if you start, for instance, at the evening here, so Erev, the underlying root for Erev is Ayin Resh Vet, which means to mix. So it's a time of mixing between the night, between the day and the night. The day ended, but it was still light out. It wasn't complete darkness. Okay, and then eventually reaches complete darkness. I don't mean complete darkness. I mean it reaches maximum darkness that it will be for that night. Again, depending on where the moon is, where the stars are. But there's no more light coming from the sun. Well, not directly anyway. Well, it's not direct ones. I have to be careful with my words. There's no light that is coming directly from the sun, except that which is being reflected off the moon. Let's put it that way. At any rate, that's called Ben Ha'arba'im, and literally means like between the mixes or between the evenings. Okay, so my understanding of it is that it begins once the sun dips below the horizon, and it ends once the sky reaches maximum darkness for that night. Okay, so that would be what we would call in English twilight. Okay, when there's still light, again, what's the definition of twilight? So the definition, I don't know if this is showing up on the screen. Let's try it again. The soft glowing light from the sky when the sun is below the horizon, caused by the refraction and scattering of the sun's rays from the atmosphere. So it's basically the fact that the sky has not reached complete darkness because the light from the sun is still refracting, which means bending, and scattering, which means, well, scattering speaks for itself, through the gases of the atmosphere, right? That's why we can still see the sun even after it dips below the horizon. If there were no atmosphere, the second the sun dipped below the horizon, we would not see it anymore. There would be nothing for it to reflect off of. Okay. At any rate, so that's Bena Arba'im. Okay, between sunset, between the evenings. Okay, between sunset and maximum darkness for that night. After that, we have what's called Laila. And Laila is separated into 3 watches. There's, oh gosh, now I remember we spoke about this a couple weeks ago. I might be getting this wrong because my memory might be playing tricks on me. But there's, I think they call it the Mishmeret Laila. Then there's Mishmeret Boker. And then they just maybe call it the Mishmeret Shnia. I can't remember now. Okay, but there are 3 watches. Basically, the nighttime is separated into 3 different watches. Okay. And what does this mean? 3 different watches. It's basically separated into 3 different equal sections. Okay, so so the first section. So we can assume that night. For an idealized assumption, let's just assume that the night lasts for 12 hours. Okay, so it's divided into 3 parts. Each watch, each mishmeret, would last for 4 hours. Okay, so you have the mishmeret rishona, mishmeret shnia, and you have a mishmeret shlishit. Okay, or mishmeret boker. I think they call the first one mishmeret laila. I think the second one is just called Mishmeret Shnia, and the third one is called Mishmeret Boker, the night watch, the second watch, and the morning watch. Okay, in the middle of it, you have Chatzia Laila, or you have Chatzot. Okay, that would be the mid-time between sunset and sunrise. So, and again, in our idealized version, if the night were lasting 12 hours, starting again in idealized version at 6 p.m. and ending at 6 a.m., then midnight would be at exactly 12 midnight, right? And that's chatzot. Chatzot means, it comes from the word chatzi, okay, which means halfway through. It means half, basically, to break in half. Okay, so it's just like we would say in English. Midnight is chatzi, right? That's when the mashchit, that's when the destroying angel came through Egypt and passed over the Jewish homes. Okay. Then you have, so just before the sun is about to arise, you have what's called alot hashachar. That means the rising up of the darkness, or the rising up of the blackness, right? And we know that Jacob wrestled with the angel in Peniel until alot hashachar, until the lifting of the darkness. Okay. So we can think of alot hashachar as basically the dusk. So once again, the sun is now coming around. Well, we're coming around. You know what I mean? The sun is now going to rise in the east. Okay, so it's set in the west. It's gone underground. No, it hasn't gone underground. That's a joke, of course. No, it's not a joke. It was something I was gonna say about how the Talmud says that the sun goes underground and heats up the Mayanot, heats up the underground springs. So I was just thinking that in my mind. So anyway, sun goes around. It's about to rise in the east. Okay, but before it actually rises above the horizon, it also, just like we have twilight, we also have dusk. Right, the light is able to reflect off the atmosphere, and so we see the light even before the sun rises above the horizon. That's alot shachar. Okay, and then once the sun comes out, then we have boker. Okay, that's the morning. Okay, and then we have boker, and yom. Well, yom I think just represents the time that the sun is out. In other words, from the sunrise to the sunset. We also have tzoharayim, which is the afternoon. And I'd have to check up on the exact specific technical meanings of those. But that's how the Israelites broke up the day, right? They basically broke it up based on the what the sun was doing, or what position the sun was in, or at night they broke it up into 3 watches. So at any rate, when it says ben ha'arba'im, which we know is the same time that the Passover sacrifice is supposed to be brought, then this is speaking about twilight. This is speaking about the time between when the sun sets and the sky reaches maximum darkness. Okay, so getting back to where we were. Where were we? I think we were here. Where the heck were we? Where was I looking? In the evening. Yeah, 38. Okay, so all right. So here, wait a second. Where were we? Exodus 29, 38. Yeah, I guess that's where we were. Yeah. Okay, I'll start back in 38. וזה אשר תעשה על המזבח כבשים בני שונה, 2 ליום תמיד, את הכבש האחד תעשה בבוקר, ואת הכבש השני תעשה בין 40, והאיסורון סולת, בלול בשמן, כתית, רבע, ההין, ונסך רביעית, ההין יין, הכבש האחד, ואת הכבש השני תעשה בין 40 כמנחת הבוקר, וכנסקו תעשה לו ריח ניחוח אישה ליהוה. עולת תמיד לדורותיכם, פתח אוהל מועד לפני יהוה, אשר יועד לכם שמה, ידבר אליך שם, ונודעתי שמה לבני ישראל, ונקדש בכבודי. Verse 44, וקידשתי את אוהל מועד, ואת המזבח, ואת אהרון, ואת בניו, אקדש לכהן לי. Verse 45, ושכנתי בתוך בני ישראל, והייתי להם לאלוהים, וידעו כי אני יהוה אלוהיהם אשר הוצאתי אותם מארץ מצרים, לשכני בתוכם, אני יהוה אלוהיהם. Okay, here we are in Exodus 30. This out of the way. And once again, we're going up to Exodus 30, 10, verse 10. So the altar of incense. Okay. Actually, excuse me for 1 second. Just turn down the heat. Okay. We are in Exodus chapter 30, verse 1. We osito mizbeach miktar ketoret atse shitim ta'ase oto. Amo orko we amo rochbo rabua yihye ve omotayim komoto mimenu kar notav. Watzipito oto zohav tahor wa'et gago wa'et ki rotav saviv wa'et kar notav wa'osito lo zer zohav saviv ushte tab'ot zohav ta'ase lo מתחת לזרו על שתי צלותיו תעשה על שני צידו וחיה לבדים לשאת אותו בהמו ועשית את הבדים עצי שיטים וציפית אותם זהב ונתת אותו לפני הפורחת אשר על ארון העדות לפני הכפורת אשר על העדות אשר היא מועד לך שמה. Verse 7. וכתיר עליו אהרון קטורת סמים בבוקר. Here we have בוקר, right? That means in the morning once the sun rises. בהית תבוא את הנרות יקדירנו בעלות אהרון את הנרות בין ה-40 יקדירנו קטורת תמיד לפני יהוה לדורותיכם. לא תעלו עליו קטורת זרה ועולה מנחה ונסך לא תסחו עליו. וכיפר אהרון על קרנותיו אחת בשנה מדם חטאת כיפורים. That's referring to Yom Kippurim here. אחת בשנה יכפר עליו לתורתכם. חודשים הוא ליהוה. Okay, so that's the end of this week's Parsha. We can go back and we can start analyzing a little bit more. So we're going back to Exodus chapter 27, verse 20. Okay, and let's start analyzing a little bit more here what we have. Okay, I've tried to download a video, which hopefully I'll play a little bit later. I mentioned last week that in 2019, yes, 2019, we were in north of Eilat, in Timna Park. There's a place called Timna Park, and there they have a replica, a life-size replica of the, I think it's the scale of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. So if you're ever in the Eilat area in Israel, go visit it. Very interesting. At any rate, I made a video at the time, and I'm gonna try to see if I can maybe play it a little bit later. Let me just see something, if it successfully was able to upload here. I don't see it yet. Okay, it's here. 1 second. Desktop. I don't know why I can't do it. Let's try this one more time. So now I send this to save the files. Oh, it's downloading again. Okay, just give me 1 second here. Okay. Well, while it's doing its thing, we'll go back to here. Okay, almost downloaded. Okay, so we're in Exodus chapter 27, verse 20. 1 second. So downloaded. Now it goes to desktop. Okay, so somehow it should Macintosh's desktop in a little while, and then maybe I can play it. Alrighty. So actually, I should upload it to YouTube. That's really what I should do. Maybe I'll do that later. Okay. So we're in Exodus chapter 27, verse 20, or we're talking about the building of the Mishkan, right, with the bronze altar. Right, we had the courtyard. We had all kinds of details. Right now we're talking about the oil for the lamps. Okay. The description of the building of the Mishkan is very visual, so it can get a little bit technical and boring if you don't have visual aids, but I'll try to add some. I found a video, as I mentioned just now, from Timna Park, from the replica of the Mishkan in Timna Park in Israel, and I also have a YouTube video I found, which is decent. So we'll try to add some visual aids. But at any rate, we're in verse 27, chapter 27, verse 20. Tetzaveh et bnei Yisrael elecha shemen halot ner tamid. So here we're being told that et bnei Israel elecha. So you have to take shemen zayit zach katit. Okay, shemen zayit is olive oil. Zach is usually translated as pure. Let's look at this word zach. Pure, clean, right? Actually, the first time it appears in the Tanakh is Exodus 27:20. So it's usually associated with imzach. Okay, so Job 8:6, right here it's associated with a person. If you're pure and upright, im zach wi yashar atar. Okay, if you're pure and upright, maybe I'm gonna try not to. Okay, at any rate, utomer zach elechi ubar. Okay, my teaching is pure. Okay, so we have here kol darkei ish zach be'enav. All the ways of a person, his eyes, right? Everyone thinks they are doing the right thing. They justify it or rationalize it to itself with tochen ruchot Yehovah, but Yehovah weighs the right. Okay, so that's what zach means. It's olive oil. Katit is usually the translation is pressed. Okay, so let's take a look at that word for a second. So katit and it's katat. Okay. And katat here is according to the Strong's to press, so they translate it as pressed olive oil, right? And let's look at it in context a little bit. Okay, so let's sena hadvorim we yakutu. The poetry of Moshe in a completely different context. Let's look here in Numbers. We first right here. So speaking about the Amalekites, okay, وَيَدْ هَا عَمَالِي وَحَكِينَ عَنِي هَيُشَيْب بَهَار أَهُ وَيَقُوم وَيَقْتُم عَد So this is speaking about the Amalekites and the Canaanites discomforting the Israelites. But here it says yaktum, right? So again, like Russian. Okay. So that's what it is, crushed. So again, if we go back to our original here, so we know Zach is pure. Okay. Katit is crushed or pressed. That's the way olive oil is, right? If you've ever seen an olive press, they'll take the olives, they'll grind it up, and then they'll put it kind of between these I don't know what they're made out of exactly, but these mats, and then the oil will come flowing out of the bottom. So zach, pure, and katit, crushed or pressed. So pure. Does it refer to it only being made from olives, that nothing else is mixed in there, or maybe more likely that it refers to the sense of the more you press olive oil, then the more so you do like a first pressing, it's more. So this might be the equivalent of virgin olive oil. Okay, that first pressing, where you get the best quality, the purest olive oil. Okay, what they'll do is they'll get the best oil out, press them again, and I think already by the third pressing, then that's considered for lighting. In fact, when they will sell in Israel, they'll call it the shemen lim or shemen zayit lim. It's the bottom stuff. It's all the leftover stuff, and they'll sell it for people who use it. Okay, so that is shemen zayit zach katit. Information. See what Robert Alter has to say about that. If anything, I have a feeling he's not going to say anything, but we can check. So those. 27:20. Yeah, clear oil. So he does have something to say about that, right? So it's going to be that first pressing. It's basically virgin beaten olives. Olive oil would have been the most expensive kind of oil in the ancient Near East. Sesame oil was cheaper and more common. Because I always associate sesame oil with the Far East. Thank you, Robert Alter. And in contrast to ordinary practice in which cloudy oil was used for burning and clear oil for culinary, almost burned in the lamps. The olives were to be beaten, katit, with mortar and pestle. Interesting. Rather than practices. Egypt, it should be noted, did not typically cultivate olive trees, and it imported olive oil at a premium from Canaan, and that supplies of fine olive oil or to obtain it in the wilderness. So this instruction is another clear instance which a detail is correct enough. Yeah, but we have a lot of interesting information here, right? So it's clear, right? So it would be that first pressing, and he's add something further that it's to be katit. So, and he says that of oil. Okay, lots of good information there. Thank you, Mr. Robert Alter. Okay. And we'd have to look into, let's see. Let's even look. No, I don't know. This is all right. More. So let's do olive Okay. Of course, the word olive or the word oil, I don't know, it's oil that derives from olive. It's probably oil that derives from olive, right? In Latin, I think it's in right, it's oleo. Okay, so let's just read a little bit about olive oil. Maybe we can put some context on it. Obtained from olives, fruit of the olea. Say, a traditional tree crop in the Mediterranean basin produced by cooking for frying foods or as a salad dressing. It is also used in cosmetics, pharmaceutical soaps, and as a fuel for traditional oil lamps. As additional use in cuisine, the other two are wheat and grapes. Okay, olive trees have been grown around the since the 8th millennium BC. Longer. Olive oil production. Wow, I did not know that. Other major producers are Portugal, Italy, Tunisia, Greece, and Turkey. Consumption is highest in Greece, followed by Italy and Spain. Composition of olive oil varies with the cultivar. Mostly of oleic acid, up to 83%, with small amounts of other fatty acids, including linoleic acid. Extra virgin olive oil is required to have no more than 0.8% free acidity. And what is free acidity? Percentage of grams of free fatty acids. I've always seen these acidity measurements, but I've never known exactly what they were. Percentage as a free. Just simulate that for a second. Grams of free fatty acids and 100 grams of oil. Okay. So olive oil has long been wild olives, which originated in Asia Minor, were collected by BC. Besides food, olive oil has been used for religious rituals, medicines as fuel in oil lamps, soap making, and skincare application. Spartans and other Greeks used to rub oil to rub themselves, used oil to rub themselves while echinacea. From its beginnings early in the 7th century BC, the cosmetic use of olive oil. We can skip this a little bit. Olive oil was also a popular form of birth control. Wow, I never knew that. History of Animals recommends applying a mixture of olive oil combined with either oil of cedar, ointment of lead, or ointment of frankincense to the cervix to prevent pregnancy. Okay. Okay. Early cultivation is not clear when and where olive trees were first domesticated. The modern olive tree most likely originated in ancient Persia and Mesopotamia and spread to the Levant and later to North Africa. Those scholars argue an Egyptian origin. The olive tree reached Greece, so Persia and Mesopotamia, most likely. The olive tree reached Greece, Carthage, and Libya sometime in the 28th century BC, having been spread westward by the Phoenicians. Until around 50. Okay. Until around 1500 BC, eastern coastal areas of the Mediterranean were most heavily cultivated. Evidence also suggests olives were being grown in Crete as long as it goes 2500 BC. The earliest surviving olive oil amphorae, that's yeah, there we go, a jug basically, date to 3500 BC. Early Minoan times, though, the production of olive oil is assumed to have started 1000 BC. Olive trees were certainly cultivated by the Lisbon period in Crete and perhaps as early Minoan. Cultivation of olive trees became particularly intense in the post-palatial period and played an important role in the island's economy. Mediterranean. Later, as Greeks established in other parts of the Mediterranean, olive farming was introduced to places like Spain and continued to spread throughout the Roman Empire. Okay, let's skip a little bit. So let's go to trade production. Archaeological evidence: 6000 BC, olives were being turned into olive oil. In 4500 BC, a now submerged prehistoric settlement south of Haifa. Wow, I had no idea. My God. Olive trees and oil production in the Eastern Mediterranean can be traced to archives of the ancient city-state Elba, which were located on the outskirts of the Syrian city Aleppo. Here's some documents dated 2400 BC, describe lands of the king and the queen. These belonged to a library of clay tablets perfectly preserved by having been baked in the fire that destroyed its source. The later sources of frequent mentions of oil in the Tanakh. So what was this? What's it to do? Dynastic Egyptians before 2000 BC imported olive oil from Crete, Syria, and Canaan, and oil was an important item in commerce and wealth. Remains of olive oil have been found in jugs over 4,000 years old in a tomb on the island of Naxos in the Aegean Sea. Skip a little bit. Olive oil was also a major export of Mycenaean Greece. Scholars believe that oil was made by a process where olives were placed in water squeezed. The oil was collected in vats. The process was known from the Bronze Age and has been used by the Egyptians and continue to be used through the Hellenistic period. And it's still used today to a certain degree. The importance of olive oil as a commercial commodity increased after the Roman conquest of Egypt, Greece, and Asia Minor led to more trade along the Mediterranean. Olive trees were planted throughout the entire Mediterranean basin during the evolution of the Roman Republican Empire. According to the historian Pliny the Elder, Italy had excellent olive oil at reasonable prices in the 1st century AD. That's a little bit too late for our time. Greek mythology, blah, blah, blah. Name of the city, Athens, where the city was named after the goddess Athena because her gift of an olive tree was held to be more precious than rival Poseidon's gift of a salt spring. Okay. There are many olive cultivars, each with a particular flavor, texture, and shelf life that make them more or less suitable for different applications, or in salads, indirect consumption in domestic cooking, catering, or industrial uses such as animal feed and during the stages of maturity. Olive fruit changes color from green to violet and then black. Olive oil taste characteristics depend on which stage of ripeness of fruits are collected. Okay, so I don't think we need to go on here. I will read a little bit about extraction. Let's see what it says here about Judaism. So in Jewish observance, olive oil was the only fuel allowed to be used in the 7-branched menorah in the Mishkan service. That's what we're reading about right now. This of the tribes of Israel from Egypt, and later in the permanent temple in Jerusalem. It was obtained by using only the first drop from a squeezed olive, used only in the temple by the priests and stored in special containers. In modern times, although candles can be used to light the menorah at Hanukkah, oil containers are preferred to imitate the original menorah. Also, you prepare the holy anointing oil for priests, kings, prophets, and other. Let's talk a little bit about extraction. Olive oil is produced by grinding olives and extracting the oil by mechanical means. Green olives usually produce more bitter oil, and overripe olives can produce oil with fermentation defects. So for good extra virgin olive oil, care is taken to make sure the olives are perfectly ripened. The process is generally as follows. The olives are ground into paste using large millstones, hammer, blade, or disc mill in the modern method. Here's a cold press olive machine in Israel. Okay. If ground with millstones, the olive paste generally stays under the stones for 30 to 40 minutes. A shorter grinding process may result in a more raw paste that produces less oil and has a less ripe taste. A longer process may increase oxidation of the paste and reduce the flavor. After grinding, the picture, olive oil mill of oil of olive is being poured into a mill. After grinding, the olive paste is spread on fiber discs, which are stacked on top of each other in a column, then placed into the press, and applied onto the column to separate the vegetal liquid from paste and water. Traditionally, oil was shed from the water by gravity. Oil is less dense than water. This very slow separation process is replaced by centrifugation, which is much faster and more thorough. Centrifuges have one for the heavier watery part and one for the oil. Olive oil should not contain significant traces of vegetal water, as this accelerates the process of organic degeneration by organisms. The separation in smaller oil mills is not always perfect. Thus, sometimes a small watery deposit containing organic particles can be found at the bottom of many times. Modern grinders reduce the olives to paste in seconds. After grinding, the paste is stirred slowly for another 20 to 30 minutes in a particular container, where the microscopic drop aggregate into bigger drops, which facilitates the mechanical extraction. The paste is then pressed by centrifugation. The water is thereafter separated from the oil, and the second centrifugation is described before. The oil produced by only physical and mechanical means, as described above, is called virgin oil. Extra virgin olive oil is virgin olive oil that satisfies specific high chemical and organoleptic criteria, low free acidity, no or very little organoleptic defects. A higher grade extra virgin olive oil is mostly dependent on favorable weather conditions. A drought during the flowering phase, for example, can result in more virgin oil. So the oil produced by only mechanical means oil is top quality virgin oil. It's worth noting that olive trees produce well every couple of years, so greater harvests occur in alternate years. Trees less. However, the quality is still dependent on weather. Sometimes the product produced oil will be filtered to eliminate remaining solid particles that may reduce the shelf life of the product. Labels may indicate the fact that the oil has not been filtered, suggesting a different taste. I love filtered oil. Fresh, unfiltered olive oil usually is a slightly cloudy appearance, or is therefore sometimes called cloudy olive oil. This olive oil used to be popular only among small-scale producers, but is now becoming trendy in line with products that receive use. But generally, if not tasted or consumed soon after production, filtered olive oil should be preferred. Some producers maintain that extra virgin filtration is detrimental to oil quality. Okay. This point of view should be considered as erroneous and probably the result of improper implementation. Okay, we can move on a little bit. So let's read this a little bit. Ancient Levant. In the ancient Levant, 3 methods were used to produce different grades of olive oil. The finest oil was produced from fully developed and ripe olives harvested slowly from the apex of the tree and lightly pressed for what flows very sweet and very thin. So that's what we're talking about there. That would be the zach katit, right? Zachian meaning pure, right? It's very sweet and very thin. So from the apex of the tree, the top of the tree, it's better quality olives because they're getting more sunlight, as opposed to the ones at the bottom of the tree, which don't get as much sunlight. And lightly pressed. Remaining olives are heavyweight and vary in ripeness. Inferior oil is produced from unripe olives that are stored and extended periods of time, grow soft, begin to shrivel to become more for grinding. Others are left for extending periods in pits in the ground to reduce sweating and decay before they are ground. Okay, oil sometimes extracted from unripe olive, known in medieval times as anfakinon, etc. The remaining semi-solid waste, called pomace, retains a small quantity, about 5 to 10% of oil that cannot be extracted by further pressing, but only with chemical solvents. This is done in specialized chemical plants. not in the oils. The resulting oil is not virgin, but which I think is dangerous for eating. It's only for lighting and maybe other mechanical uses. Handling of olive waste is an environmental challenge because the wastewater, which amounts to millions of tons annually in the European Union, is not biodegradable, is toxic to plants, and cannot be processed through conventional water treatment systems. Traditionally, olive pomace would be used as compost or developed as a possible biofuel, although these uses introduce concern due to chemicals present in the pomace. A process called valorization of olive oil pomace is under research and development, consisting of additional processing to obtain value-added byproducts such as animal feed, food additives, human products, and phenolic and fatty acid extracts for potential human use. Okay. Well, we get the idea. So here are the countries that produce the most olive oil: Spain, Portugal, Tunisia, Greece, Turkey, Morocco, Italy. These countries except for Greece. Okay. Let's see. Alrighty. Let's read just a little bit more. We're getting a crash course in olive oil production. All production begins by transforming the olive fruit to olive paste by crushing or pressing. This paste is then malaxed. Slowly turned or mixed. So by crushing or pressing, right? So that's the katit, would be the crushing. The olive paste by crushing or pressing. Okay, so here's crushing, that's the katit, right? Katit is crushing, not pressing. This paste is then malaxed, slowly turned or mixed to allow droplets to agglomerate. The oil is then separated from the watery matter. The use of a press, traditional method, or centrifugation, after extracting a solid substance called pomace, still is a small quantity of olive oil. One parameter used to characterize an oil is its acidity. In this context, acidity is not chemical acidity in the sense of pH. See, I never knew that. Well, I knew it because it's a percent, not a pH. But the percent measured by weight of free oleic acid measured by quantitative analysis is a measure of the hydrolysis of the oil's triglycerides. As the oil fatty acids from the glycerides increase the level of free acidity, therefore increasing hydraulic, okay, etc. And another measure of the oil's chemical degradation is peroxide valve, blah, blah, blah. The grades of oil extracted from the olive fruit can be classified as virgin, means the oil was produced by the use of mechanical means only, with no chemical treatment. The term virgin oil, with reference to production method, includes all grades of virgin oil, including extra virgin, virgin, ordinary virgin, and lampante virgin. Never heard of that one. Virgin oil, or lampant, is olive oil extracted by virgin mechanical methods, but not suitable for human consumption without further refining. Lampante is the attributive form of lampa, the Italian word for lamp, referring to the earlier use of such oil in oil lamps. Lampante virgin oil can be used for industrial purposes or refined to make it edible. Refined olive oil is olive oil obtained from any grade of virgin olive oil by refining methods which do not lead to alterations to the original glyceritic structure. The refining process removes color, odor, and flavor from the olive oil, leaves behind a very pure form of oil that is tasteless, colorless, and odorless, and extremely low in free fatty acids. Olive oils sold as grades extra virgin olive oil and virgin olive oil not contain any refined oil. Interesting. Oil, treating olive pomace, the leftover paste after the pressing of olives for virgin olive oils with solvents or other physical treatments to the exclusion of oils obtained by the esterification process. and of any mixture with oils of other kinds. Is then refined oil, pomace oil, and once reblended with virgin olive oils for taste, then known as olive pomace oil. Sounds disgusting. Okay. All right. I think we got enough here. More than enough. Maybe too much. That is olive oil. So getting verse here. Okay. So we said we elecha shemen zayit zach atit. So we now have a lot more perspective on what this means, right? It means we saw that Robert Alter translated it as clear, right? And I think of a very thin, pure, clear olive oil. So that's most likely, or I'd say almost definitely, what this word zach is referring to. It's a nice, clear. It's not dark, or what's the word for? Opaque, right? It's transparent. It's clear. It's light. Heat is, we saw there were two methods for taking the olives and crushing them. I'm sorry, taking the olives and turning them into olive paste, and crushing. So katit means crushed. We saw that in the context of other verses. So this is olive oil that's crushed. Robert Alter once again says, regarding that, let's read his explanation. Olive oil would have been the most expensive, blah, blah, blah. Ordinary practice, cloudy oil would be used for burning and clear oil for culinary purposes. The best oils to be burned in lamps. The olives are to be beaten with mortar and pestle rather than crushed in a press. The latter being a less labor-intensive process. And that's all we need to know, okay? So the olives are to be beaten with mortar and pestle rather than crushed in a press. So I guess he's referring there to the stage in which the olives are turned into olive paste, or rather than crushed in a press. I'm not sure. It's not clear exactly what he's referring to. But at any rate, we can assume this is perhaps referring to when the olives is originally turned into olive paste, and here it's crushed rather than just pressed. Remember, we saw in the Wikipedia article that the two main ways of turning the olive into olive paste was crushing or pressing. Let's read that again. Well, it would, one way or another, it's crushed, either in the original process of turning the olives into the olive paste, or maybe just crushed enough so that olive oil starts to freely flow. Not sure. We're going to leave it at that. Any rate, very fine quality olive oil, lim'or, right, for lighting. Le'alot ner tamid. Okay? Raise up, literally to raise up the eternal flame. Tamid is the eternal flame. Oops. Let me just see something here. Lot ner tamid, so that the lamps may be kept burning. Literally, lot ner tamid means literally to rise up a candle or a light, right, or a lamp, always. Halot ner tamid. Get Robert Alter's translation there. To kindle a lamp perpetually. Okay, to kindle a lamp perpetually is how he translates it. Let's see if anything to say here. To kindle a lamp perpetually. The Hebrew tamid means perpetually or regularly repeated, despite the attachment of later Jewish tradition to an eternal light. The conventional English rendering of the two words here, ner tamid, the clear indication of the next verse, confirmed by the sanctuary story of young Samuel and Elian, Samuel 2, is that the lamp burned from evening until daybreak and was lit again each evening. Interesting. So what he's saying is that the light was not always kept. It was lit at night. It was lit basically only at night. It was not lit during the day. It would almost kind of seem kind of silly to have it lit during the day, right? But at any rate, it means ner tamid, to literally to rise up, to raise up. Here they translate this cause to burn. Look at that for a second. So it is from Allah to go up. But it also has this meaning. Let's just find it here. Animals, vegetation, spring up, grow, natural phenomenon. Oh my God. It's used often, obviously. Feel out of a place. Oh my God. I don't know what I'll find it. Lahalot used to get in the context of lighting. Let's see. So this is Exodus 27:20. Let's see if we can find it. Listen here. Exodus 27. No, I can do this. Second. There it is. So, cause to ascend. Raising lamp upon the lampstand. Exodus 25:37, Exodus 27:20. Dust on the head, flesh upon the knee, put ornaments. Light lamp, make flame go up, and others of raising lamp upon lampstand. Okay. So, yeah, because it's a very awkward phrase. You wouldn't, literally, la'alot means to raise up. Okay, to lift up. So, la'alot ner tamid. So, to raise up a ner, now let's look at this word ner. So, ner in modern Hebrew is a candle, right? So, a lamp, they translate it as. But is it speaking about the actual lamps? Not really. We have the and et nerotea shiva. He lighted the lamps al hanerot. Yehovah. Nemoor la'alot ne'amid. Neroch et hanerot lifnei Yehovah. So ner is translated here. A lamp. But what does that mean exactly? Like it means a lamp, as we usually translate it in usual understanding. It's a vessel which rises, right? Which fuels kind of way of putting it. Lahalot ner tamid, to raise up a lamp always. To raise up a lamp. So maybe sometimes in biblical Hebrew you can have words that are meant by extension. I forgot exactly what the technical name for it is. But when you say to raise up a lamp, it could be implying by extension to raise up a flame lamp. Because the ner actually seems to refer to the lamp itself. Lahalot ner tamid. It's the very awkward kind of translation. See how Everett Fox translates it. So Exodus 27. Now you command the children of Israel, and they may fetch you oil of olives, clear, beaten, for the light, to draw up a lamp wick regularly. To draw a lamp wick regularly. Yeah. Draw up a lamp wick. I don't even know what that means in English, for God's sakes. Draw up a lamp wick. Maybe it means the oil going up in the lamp. Lalot ner tamid. So tamid, one of the things that Robert Alter is saying, right? Let's read his explanation again. The Hebrew tamid means perpetually, regularly repeated. Okay? Despite the attachment of later Jewish tradition to an eternal light, the conventional English rendering the two words here, ner tamid, and if you go into, let's say, a synagogue, a lot of times they'll have over the Aron HaKodesh, call it the ark where they put the Torah, they have a light which is supposed to represent, and it's never supposed to be turned off. It's the ner tamid, the eternal light. It's supposed to represent this. The clear indication of the next verse, confirmed by the sanctuary story of Samuel and Eli in 1 Samuel 2, is that the lamp is burned from evening until daybreak and was lit again each evening. So la'alot ner tamid. I guess it means la'alot ner tamid, to raise up a lamp perpetually. I guess it means to cause flame to arise from a lamp perpetually by extension. Okay. Maybe we should look at that story in 1 Samuel. So in the tent side of the parochet is curtain, which separates the regular area from the Holy of Holies. Asher al ha'idut. יערוך אותו אהרון ובניו מערב עד בוקר לפני יהוה חוקת עולם מאת בני ישראל. So here it says, so it's in Ohel Moed, so outside of the curtain, Asher al ha'idut, the curtain that basically that separates that holy of holy areas where the Ark of the Testimony is stored. Ya'arох Aharon ubanav. So Aaron and his and by the way, when I do the more depth analysis, I'm not going to do as careful original Hebrew pronunciation. I focus so much on that, I'm not focusing on the meaning of the words. Here I want to focus a bit more on the meaning of the words. Aaron ubanav me'erev ad boker. So to do it from the morning, right? Here was evening. We know that's as soon as the sun sets. Boker is as soon as sunset. Okay, so erev is sunset. To sunrise really would be the translation, the best translation here. Okay, Lifnei Yehovah Chukkat Olam Ladoratam Me'et it's an eternal statute throughout the generations from the children of Israel. So here we have an eternal statute, but we know it's not done today. We know it can't be done when there's no tabernacle, there's no mishkan, or there's no temple. So it's we see this phrase a lot, or similar phrases, right? Which may not mean throughout their entire generations. Maybe it only means, when a temple exists, etc. So let's maybe look at the story here of First Samuel chapter 2. First Samuel chapter 2. We'll put this aside. We'll put this aside. I'll do it like this. So we want First Samuel chapter 2. And this is my excuse to go into the Tanakh for a little while. We'll look at the Hebrew. We'll just go through chapter 2. Okay, so we know about the story of Hannah and Penina. Let's just find exactly where it is. So this is the story of Hannah and Penina. Just want to find those verses which are relevant. And this is Hannah's prayer. She prays to God. And after God gives her after Yehovah gives her a son, Samuel, then she recites a prayer of thanksgiving, basically. Okay, so let's see. I want to get to the right place. So let's start here. We'll start right after the prayer of Hannah. Okay. And Eli is the priest in the temple. I'm sorry, the temple's not born yet. He is in the tabernacle, right? Again, let's get the context. So the tabernacle was at Shiloh at the time. And there were two sons. Okay, so the two sons of Eli were Hophni and Pinchas. Two sons of Eli were the priests of the Lord. And Hannah had her womb closed, right? Is so often the story in the Tanakh. So Eli was also the priest there. So it was Eli and his two sons, basically. Maybe Eli was already retired. Okay, and so she prays for a son, and she says, when her son was born, she'll dedicate it to God. Okay. And so Shmuel is born and is brought to the temple in Shiloh, is brought to the tabernacle in Shiloh, I should say, and is dedicated. And then Hannah recites prayer. And then Elkanah, her husband, went home to Ramah, but the boy ministered before Yehovah under Eli the priest. So we'll look up here in 1 Samuel chapter 2. Let's see what we can learn about the lighting lamp. Okay. And that was where exactly? Oops, 1 second. So we're going to pick it up in verse 12, chapter 2, verse 12. Okay. Uvnei Eli bli al lo yadu et Yehovah. The sons of Eli. So he's the priest. He's the old man. Bnei Bilial. Worse, Bilial, as I learned from my years like this, I never know what rabbis told me, true or a bunch of baloney. Bilial means bli means without, and al means worth. So let's see, worthlessness, right? Bli, not without. And al, we use Bilial. Okay. Lo yadu et Yehovah. They did not know Yehovah. Umishpat konim et am. Can you please get the cat out of here?
When are you done?
In about half an hour. Okay.
So should I eat at this house?
No, we're gonna eat. Okay.
She was offering to.
If you want to go, I have to study. Okay. Please take
I'm gonna get
Suf.
sick.
All right, but Suf has to go out, and you have to let me finish the study. Okay. Okay. Umishpat kohanim am. Ish shloach zevach. Uba na'ar hakohen kivashel basar umazleg biado. Okay, so what is going on here? Mishpat. So the mishpat means the judgment, but it means the way, the rule of the priests regarding the people. Kol ish zoveach zevach. So each person slaughters his own sacrifice. Ba na'ar hakohen, and comes one of the, you could call it apprentice Kohen, or the young Kohens, Vashel Basar, and Vashel Basar, who seethes, really boils the meat, Umaz Shalosh Shinayim Biado, and with a 3-pronged pitchfork, I guess you could say, in his hand. Let's see how the English. Muslim. Oh, darn it. That's what I meant to do. So this is 12, right? Now, it was a practice of priests that whenever any of the people offered a sacrifice, the priest's servants would come with a 3-pronged fork in his hand while the meat was being boiled. Okay, fine. So they translate that as fork. So what's the story? Wahika b'kaor or kalachat or b'parur kol asher ya'aleh hamazleg kacha ya'asu lekol Yisrael aba'im sham b'shilo. So basically, it's the point we're getting their portion. Okay, wahika b'kior, in the translate this as sink. The pan they translate here badud, the kettle, or cauldron, pot. So different names in modern day Hebrew. Kior is a sink. Dud is like a how would you say it? Like a container. Kalachat. Kalachat is a shower. Parur, that's not really used at all as far as I can see in modern Hebrew. At any rate, types of whatever it was, wherever the meat was being seethed or cooked. Okay. So what they would take this 3-pronged fork. So the Kohanim, how would they get their sacrifice, right? So they would take this fork and dip it into the pot, and take out as much meat as they could, and that was their portion. Okay. And this is the way they did it for all of Israel that would come there to Shiloh. Okay. Verse 15. Gam b'terem yaktirun. Was the forbidden fats, right? They were not eaten. They were not to be eaten. They were burnt. Okay. Uban ara kohen. So the apprentice Kohen or the Kohen would come, Amar Ish Hazoveach, and would say to the person who is slaughtering or brought the sacrifice, I guess, Litzlot LaKohen v'lo yikach mincha basar mivushal ki im. So and would say to the person bringing the sacrifice, Tana basar litzlot LaKohen, give meat. So litzlot is to roast, so the Kohen can roast it. And let him not take from you cooked meat, but live meat. In other words, I guess what's going on here is that instead of cooking the meat and then dipping the fork in there, that this yonim would come before any processing was done to it. Okay, so I'm not an expert on exactly how the temple works. It's a little difficult for me to know exactly what's going on there, but let's see what it says here. But even before the fat was burned, the priest's servants would come and say to the person who was sacrificing, give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, only raw. Okay. Fine. Elav haish kater yom וכך לך כאשר תאווה נפשך, and ויאמר אליו הלב, וכך לך כאשר תאווה נפשך, אמר לו תיתן, או אם לא לקחתי בחוזקה. Okay, so not very nice. So if the person would say in response, let them First, let them burn the fat, and then take whatever you want. Okay, so they said, no, I don't want to do it this way. I want to first do it so that the fat is burnt off and that take a share. As your heart desires, or as your heart desires, we're translated as Bamar lo ki atati. He said, no, give it now. And if you don't, I'm going to take it by force. Okay, so let's get an English translation there because it's a little bit technical. But even before the fat was, the priest's servants would come and say to the person who was sacrificing, give the priest some raw meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, only raw. If the person said to him, let the fat be burned first and then take whatever you want, the servant would answer, no, hand it over now. If you don't, I'll take it by force. So the Kohanim are taking their portion before the fat is burned. One of you take up so you don't have to call me. Okay, thank you. So this was a very great sin. So this was a very great sin for the face of God. Because these people abhorred, disdained the offering of Yehovah. Here in terms of a meat offering, not a grain offering. Minchas often uses a grain offering, here to meat offering. So what was the sin? I'm only speculating here. I'd have to research this much more carefully. The sin was either that they were taking more than their portion, but I don't think so. I think what's going on here is that they were taking the meat before the chaylev was burnt, right? We know that you're not supposed to eat the chaylev, okay, of the sacrifice, or the Karaites say of all of the animals. You're not supposed to eat chaylev. The rabbinites say chaylev is only not supposed to be eaten in the context of sacrifice, okay? So it seems that these apprentices were taking the meat before the chaylev was burnt off. In that case, or that they were just, but I think what is they were well say about chapter 2. There's Hannah's prayer. I did not know the Lord was the priest of the men and the lad on the meeting, his hand into the with all the Israelites. He shall hand it over by now, and if not, I will take it by force. And the lad's offense was very great before Yehovah, for they scorned the Lord's offering. So let's see what's going on now. Let's see if there are any commentaries. Untypical, blah, blah, blah. Eli's sons are represented in a kind of frenzy of gluttony, poking their three-pronged forks into every imaginable sort of pot and pan. The sense is then heightened in the aggressiveness of the dialogue that follows, which Eli's son insists on snatching the meat uncooked from the worshippers, not allowing them, as was customary, first to burn away the fat. Okay. Well, it doesn't go into any further detail. So it's either that they just stole, as Robert Alter's saying, or that they were taking it before the fat was burned off and they were actually eating the fat. Either way, this was considered a great sin before Yehovah. So in verse 18, Ushmuel misharet et pnei Yehovah na'ar hagur ephod bad. So Shmuel, this is Samuel, misharet et pnei Yehovah, was served before the face of Yehovah, literally. Ministering before the Lord, that's how they say it. Na'ar hagur ephod bad. He was one of these young priests, right? And hagur ephod bad, and so he had the ephod and the bad. Basically, he was dressed in the priestly garment or linen ephod. Okay. Umail katan ta'aselo imo, and his mother had made him a small me'il. In modern Hebrew, me'il is like a jacket. Here they translate it as a robe. Imo ve'ha'alata lo miyamim yamima. So his mother would make made him a small robe. Ve'halata lo miyamim yamima, and each year miyamim yamima means each year. Ve'alota et isha mizbach et zevach hayamim. And she would bring it to him. I guess she would bring him a new one each year when she would go up. Halota et isha, when she would bring a fire offering. Mizbach et zevach hayamim, when she would bring a fire offering to sacrifice on zevach hayamim. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Literally the sacrifice of the days. Maybe it's referring to a certain specific day. The annual sacrifice. Okay. Uberach Eli et Elkanah. ואת אשתו ואמר ישם יהוה לך זרע מן האישה הזאת תחת השאלה אשר שאל יהוה והלכו למקומו. And Eli would bless them. Eli seems like a decent enough guy, but a little bit blind to what's going on. So he blessed Elkanah. Elkanah was Hannah and Penina's husband, the father of Shmuel. ואת אשתו, and his wife. ואמר ישם יהוה לך זרע מן האישה. And he said to me, Yehovah, make for you or give you seed from this woman, me'aisha azot, meaning from Hannah. In other words, may Yehovah give you another child instead of the one that you've donated to the temple, that you dedicated to the temple, instead of Shmuel, right? They would see Shmuel only once a year when they came up to bring the sacrifice. She would bring in this new coat. And so she didn't have another child. Shmuel was her only child, right? And they went back home. Okay, verse 21. Ki fakad Yehovah et Hannah v'tahar v'telet shlosha banim u'shtei manot v'yigdal hana'ar Shmuel im Yehovah. So Yehovah revisited, remembered, however you want to translate this word fakad. He remembered Hannah, and she became pregnant and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. So with Shmuel, she had altogether now 6 children, right? 4 sons and 2 daughters. Vayigdal hana'ar Shmuel im Yehovah, and Shmuel, the young man Shmuel, grew up with God. In other words, I guess working in, going in the way of God. Okay. Eli Zakin Me'od, and Eli, that's the old priest, right? The father of Pinchas and Hofni, was it? Hofni. And so Eli was old, but he had heard all of what his sons were doing, meaning they were taking the sacrifices or eating the fats or both. What they were doing to all of Israel. They were also sleeping with the women who would gather at the entrance of the Ohel Moed, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So that's not good. Does that mean they were sleeping with married women, unmarried women? Not so clear. Curious to see what Robert Alter has to say. Year after year. So clause is missing in the Qumran scroll and in one version of the Septuagint. In fact, sexual exploitation was not mentioned in the initial narrative report of the sons' misdeeds. True. There is, however, consonance between their appetitive impulse in snatching the meat and grabbing the women, perhaps reinforced by the satiric and phallic image of thrusting forks into bubbling pots. Oh boy. Okay. Okie dokie. Well, he doesn't say much about whether they were married women or unmarried women, but that's what he was doing. Okay. Just 1 second here. Oh, this is interesting. I just want to read this because there's some interesting points here. This is speaking about the little cloak, the ma'il, modern Hebrew jacket. This is a poignant instance of the expressive reticence of biblical narrative. We've been told nothing about Hannah's feelings as a mother after her separation from the child for whom she so fervently prayed. This minimal imitation of Hannah's annual gesture of making a little cloak for her son has lent to the Lord beautifully intimates the love she preserves for him. The garment fashioned as a gift of maternal love stands in contrast to the ephod, the acolyte's official garb for his cultic office. Moreover, the robe Me'il will continue to figure importantly in Samuel's life and even his afterlife, as we shall have occasion to see. This is a very good point, and I never thought of that before, that the Me'il, pay attention to Shmuel and his Me'il, because that was from his mother. That was like his special little coat that he got from his mother. Okay. So, going back here. So, the sons of Eli were sleeping with the women. And he said to them, why are you doing these things? I'm hearing about all these bad things from all of the people of what you're doing. Paraphrasing. Al banai kilo tova shmua al banai kilo tova shmua asher anochi shomea me avirim ma'avirim am Yehovah. Basically, the reputation I'm hearing from you, or what I'm hearing about you, is not good from the people who are coming to worship Yehovah, to sacrifice to Yehovah. Okay, verse 25. Im tu ish leish upilalo Elohim u'im liYehovah yachteh ish mi yitpalel lo. So now he gives a kind of a philosophical note, I guess. If a man sins to another man, right? Man against man sins. So, for instance, it's like stealing something, right? Upilalo Elohim. Let God judge him. Im liHoah yachta ish mi yitpalel lo. So, okay, so if a man sins against a man, God can judge them. But if a man sins against God, who will pray for him, or who will intercede for him? Okay, so let's just see a translation here. If one person sins against another, God may mediate for the offender. But if anyone sins against the Lord, who will intercede for them? So Eli is trying to point out to his sons what a serious crime it is that they're sinning against God by either stealing sacrifices or eating the chelev, right? So God can be the judge against if a man sins against man. But if man sins against God, there's no one higher than God. Who else is going to be the judge, right? Who's going to intercede, right? But they didn't listen to their father's voice because God desired to kill them. I guess he'd had enough of them. So this young man Shmuel grew up. He needed to grow up, and he was good in the eyes of God, or good with God, and good with the people. Okay, well, we didn't get to the point where it mentions the Ner, and that's the point I wanted to, but I want to end the study in just a minute. So let's just find it. Just to read it through very quickly. V'yavo ish Elohim el Eli v'yomer elav ko amar Yehovah lo nigleti el beit avicha biotam b'mitzrayim. Okay, so here comes a prophet to Eli, and he's not happy. El beit avicha biotam b'mitzrayim le beit Faro. בחור אותו מכל שבטי ישראל לי לכהן, לעלות על מזבחי להקטיר קטורת לשאת אפוד לפניי, ותנה לבית אביך את כל אישי בני ישראל. So this prophet is coming to Eli, and he's basically saying, did I not rescue your fathers from Egypt and make them the Kohanim and make them the priests? Verse 29. Again, I'm paraphrasing because I just want to skip through a little bit. Lama tiv atu bezivchi. Why have you literally kicked, or why have you disgrace? Literally to kick is leave ot. Bezivchi u'b'minchati asher tziviti ma'on me'avon v'techabed et banecha mimeni. Why have you respected your sons? Why have you honored your sons more than you honored me? Le ha. Avri achem me reshit kol minha Yisrael ami. Lavri achem, to make them fat from the mereshit kol minha Yisrael ami. It's so interesting. I wish we had a little bit more time. Maybe we'll do it a little bit later. But why have you made them fat from the first fruits of all the offerings that Israel brings Yisrael le ami? So, in other words, he's saying, why have you taken the first fruits? I'm supposed to get the first fruits. Well, the chalev is burnt on the altar, and that is a sweet scent sent to Yehovah. So again, this points back to the fact that maybe they were taking the chalev for themselves rather than letting it be burnt on the altar for Yehovah. Therefore, so says Yehovah, the God of Israel, Amor amati betecha ubeit avicha יתאחו לפניי עד עולם ועתה נאום יהוה היללה לי כי מכבדי כבד ובוזי יקללו הנה מאים וגידעתי את זרעך את זרע. Okay, it goes on basically. I don't want to go through the whole thing right now. I do want to end the study. Okay, but basically he kills off the two sons. Okay, to make a long story short, very interesting stuff here. I wish we had a little bit more time. Maybe we'll pick it up this afternoon. I didn't find the part where I was speaking about the Nerot, however. So let me look again right here in the, so it was 1 Samuel chapter 2, right? One second. Yeah, I don't see it anywhere here. This is Hannah's prayer. Here we go. That's where it is. It's in Samuel 3. 1 Samuel chapter 3. This is where he thinks Shmuel thinks Eli is calling him, but it's not. It's prophecy. So I guess this is the verse it's referring to. I'll just look at it in English. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out. And Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel. Let's see anywhere else it mentions the lamp here. Let's try here. Nowhere. So I guess that's the verse he was referring to. So here it's 1 Samuel 3, chapter 3, verse 3. The lamp of God had not yet gone out. So the implication is it's nighttime, the lamp had been lit and it had not yet gone out. So I'm not sure exactly what Robert Alter was trying to say, but let's go back to where we were. So now we're back in Exodus 27. And let's look at his comment once again. And we're in verse 20 or so. It says here, blah, blah, blah. The clear indication of the next verse, regularly repeated despite the test, blah, 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 blah. The clear indication of the next verse, confirmed by the sanctuary story of young Samuel and Eli in 1 Samuel 2, is that the lamp burned from evening until daybreak and was lit again each evening. I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about here. He must be talking about this verse here, 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 3, because I don't see the lamp mentioned anywhere here at all. Check again. Nope. Check it through the concordance, but it doesn't matter. And here, it's not mentioned at all. Okay, I guess he's just referring to this verse and trying to show that the lamp was not perpetually burning, but that it was lit at night. Okay? So it's just this one verse. The lamp of God had not yet gone out. And that's it. That's what he's referring to here. The lamp of God had not yet gone out. That's it. I don't know how that proves exactly what he's trying to prove, but we'll leave it at that. Okay, I'm going to end the morning study here. We'll pick the study up again in about 2.5 hours. Okay, at 4:30 p.m. Jerusalem time, which is Greenwich Mean Time, 2:30 p.m. and New York time, that makes it 9:30 a.m. So we'll end it here. Thank you for joining the study, and hope to see you again this afternoon. Shabbat Shalom.